I'm Doug Schwartz, the director of the Quinnipiac University poll. I'd like to share with you the results from our latest poll that was conducted over this past Monday and Tuesday with over 1,000 Connecticut registered voters. The poll is good news for Richard Blumenthal. He retains a commanding lead over Linda McMahon in his race for senator. He leads McMahon by 25 points. He has been hurt somewhat by the Vietnam controversy, but not that much. In our last poll 2 months ago, he was leading McMahon by 33 points, so that lead has dropped 8 points in our poll today. I can also, yes?
Plus or minus 3, right?
Yes, the margin of error on this poll is much plus or minus 3 points. In terms of Linda McMahon's favorability, her negatives have gone up since our last poll. She has not gotten a bounce out of her convention victory. Her negatives are up 13 points. In our last poll, 26% of Connecticut voters had an unfavorable opinion of her. Today, 39% do.
When you say negatives, what do you mean by negatives?
The negative opinion of her unfavorables. So when we ask voters, do you have a favorable, unfavorable opinion of that candidate, or haven't you heard enough? So when I say her negatives, I'm talking about the percentage that has an unfavorable opinion.
So the more they hear, what happens?
The more that they have found out about Linda McMahon, the less they like her.
Do you ask specifically? Sorry, go ahead.
You didn't have any specific questions that would really get to what is driving that negative number up, right?
The specific questions that we asked were on experience, on does she care about the needs and problems of people like you? Is she honest and trustworthy? Does she have strong leadership qualities? On all of those measures, Blumenthal does much better than McMahon. The one that really struck me as really standing out as a problem for McMahon is, does she have the right kind of experience to be a U.S. Senator from Connecticut? On that one, as we found in the past, most Connecticut voters say no, she doesn't have the right kind of experience to be a U.S. Senator from Connecticut.
Is there anywhere in the poll where you ask her experience with the WWE? Is that asked specifically?
We did last time, not in this poll. But it has not helped her. At least that's what we found in our last poll. And when we asked specifically about people's image of the WWE in our last poll 2 months ago, they had a negative opinion overall of the WWE.
So-called national trend about people wanting somebody outside of government, and which is the thrust of her marketing campaign, isn't working here.
It's not working right now. She hasn't gotten very much for her $15 million that she spent.
Do you find Blumenthal's lead surprising in light of the mountain of negative press he received last week nationally?
No, you're right. That Blumenthal certainly got a lot of bad press last week. It was a very difficult week for him, but despite all that bad press, he remains very popular. People know the Attorney General, they like the Attorney General, and they appear to be giving him, cutting him some slack on this controversy.
The McMahon campaign calls your poll odd and curious. Do you find it so or not?
No, I don't.
Well, the Rasmussen poll showed
Right.
them 3 points apart. Their own polls showed them 15 points apart. Yours, I mean, you do a larger sample. Is that the only difference?
Timing is also important on this story. We waited a week after the controversy. I believe the Rasmussen poll was conducted immediately after the controversy broke last week.
So
You
the
didn't
time-
start.
Yeah, I think it came out the next day or the day after.
Right.
2
You
days
didn't
ago.
start polling till Monday.
That's right.
Tell me more
After the
about this
convention.
post-convention bounce or
Right.
non-bounce.
We didn't see a bounce.
electorate. Correct. I'm with you. You didn't see a bounce, but the electorate had enough time to swallow and understand and hear about it.
I think so. I mean, it was well covered in the press over the weekend.
So Malloy got no convention bounce either.
We didn't see any bounce from Malloy or for Foley.
Talking about the government. Give us the Republican and Democrat analysis.
About but go ahead, guys.
On the governor's race,
I didn't get Paul's comment there. Paul, say that again.
Okay. Fire away, guys.
Fire away,
on-
Ridley.
On the governor's race, Foley continues to lead in the Republican primary over Fideli and Griebel. However, there's still a very large number of Republicans that are undecided. In fact, that is the largest group on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, Lamont continues to lead Malloy, but again, large undecided there. On the Republican side, we have a very large, haven't heard enough about all of the candidates. So they're largely unknown. The best known is Foley, and I think that helps to explain his lead in the primary. Similarly, on the Democratic side, Lamont is much better known than Malloy. I think it's this name recognition advantage that helps give him the lead in the primary poll.
What do they say about Malloy? Was it 65% don't know enough about him? Wasn't it something?
It was about that high. About 2/3 of Democrats say they haven't heard enough about Malloy to form an
What does that
opinion.
say about a guy who was the party's nominee coming out of the last convention?
2 times.
It says that he hasn't gotten better known. It was a problem that he had 4 years ago, getting better known outside of Fairfield County. So now he's going to have the matching funds so that he can spend some money on advertising that will help him get better known.
Some say money talks. Do you find that, is there anywhere in the poll that it shows that because people have seen some of the candidates on TV, that gives them, they get an advantage clearly from that?
We didn't ask that specifically in this poll. We didn't ask any questions about the ads, but that's how I would interpret it, is the fact that you've seen a lot more of Ned Lamont on TV than you have Dan Malloy. That helps give him an advantage in the race.
As far as the poll, the difference between the polls, you attribute that mostly to the timing, that those were done while that story was being talked about, and this is done after the convention.
The other thing that I would say is we really don't talk about other polls. We only talk about our polls. So.
Right, but that's a big difference. 3 points and 25 points.
Yeah, like I said, I can't really speak to their poll. I can only talk about our poll.
Still a lot of undecided voters.
Still a lot of undecided in the primaries.
Not undecided for the race for Senate?
There are some, but it isn't nearly as large as on the Republican side,
On the Senate race,
on the primary side.
in your experience with other polls, have you seen a candidate like Blumenthal go through such a maelstrom, for lack of a better word, and then still, according to your poll, not have suffered that much? And what do you attribute that to? I mean, it's got to be his years of experience, I assume, and his familiarity with the voters.
Yeah, that's what I would attribute it to.
Have you seen anything like that before?
I haven't seen anything like it before, Sue. And I would attribute it to the fact that, people know him, they like him. He's been the Attorney General for 20 years, so they're willing to cut him some slack on this controversy.
Doug, what kind of screens did you do on the primary polling? That obviously is no screens.
Just other than if they identify themselves as a registered Democrat or registered Republican. As we get closer to the primaries, we will introduce some likely voter screens, but right now it's not likely voters. It's just registered Democrat or registered Republican.
And you're still just doing landline telephones, right?
Yes.
Doug, could you talk about the independents and how they've broken down in the Senate race?
The independents are always the key swing group in Connecticut elections. They are the largest voting bloc. And in the Senate race, Blumenthal continues to do very well among independents. I believe his lead among independents pretty much matches his overall lead of 25 points. And if you look at the favorability ratings, he is very favorably viewed by independents. On the other hand, Linda McMahon, who needs to do well among independents, is negatively viewed by independents. So that's a group that she really needs to make some headway with.
And he even has a high favorability rating among Republicans. People say they're Republicans. Right?
Yeah, on the approval rating, you're right. Blumenthal is still popular among Republicans in terms of the job he's doing as Attorney General. When we asked the matchup, McMahon wins among Republicans. However, he still gets more than a quarter of the Republican vote, which is a substantial share of the vote. Now, that could well change as we get closer to the actual election, but right now, that's another indication of the problems that she's having, is that she's having trouble holding on to her own base.
In terms of, how significant is it that Simmons isn't in it? I mean, you went into the field and he was still in it. Now he's not in it. Where are those votes going to go?
That's a great question, and I don't know. We're going to continue to track it, and we'll see.
Doug, you did the military families. I wondered if you saw anything surprising out of that.
We did ask about military households. Overall, they are a little bit less supportive of Blumenthal, but in general, they still like Blumenthal. So he's still popular among military households. He still wins in the matchup among military households, but it's a little bit of a closer race.
What is your experience on how long it takes for negative news to set in? In other words, the Blumenthal thing came out Tuesday. If you took a poll Wednesday, there might not be any change. What is your experience on, or is there any experience on how long negative news takes to settle in?
I don't know. I think it really does depend on what the news is, how bad it is, and does it keep coming out? That's another question that's I think you have to put out there is, if the story continues, obviously that would hurt Blumenthal campaign. But if the story is over, then it won't.
The Greenberg poll found 91% had heard of the story. Did you ask about the story?
And we found similar numbers. About 90% said that they had heard a lot or some about this story.
Another question on...
Sorry, maybe the poll came out, or the poll was done prior to people finding out that there was a longer clip of a tape. Is that possible, that all the news hadn't digested in the week, that it was done exactly right after the news first broke?
That's true. And like I said, we waited a week, and there has been more news since the initial story broke. As you said, the whole video did come out. His apology came out before we went into the field. So there have been new developments since the story first broke. And that's why I say, nobody knew what would happen 10 days ago. We don't know what's going to happen 10 days from now, let alone 5 months from now when the election happens. But right now, we can tell you this is where the race stands.
Monday is when you went out, Monday night.
Yeah, Monday night and Tuesday night.
So the apology had already been in the newspapers and on radio and television at that point. Yeah.
In terms of Linda McMahon's number, there was a 10-point swing, I believe, in the honest and trustworthy from 35 to 45%. That's getting you closer to 50%. Isn't that some good news and some sign?
I think her honesty number, you're right, went up in the yes, but also the no by a similar amount.
Yeah.
So the net effect wasn't an improvement. That's my recollection. But I'm glad you brought up the honesty and trustworthy numbers, because that's where we saw Blumenthal take the biggest hit. He dropped 21 points from our last poll on that. We asked about it in January, and 81% said Blumenthal was honest and trustworthy. In this poll, only 60% said that. So he has fallen, but having said that, he still enjoys a better number on that measure than McMahon does.
Just go ahead.
Right.
With all Lamont's name recognition, there still seems to be a segment of the Democrats that are undecided, and
Right.
certainly Dan Malloy has a lot of time to get better known.
Yep.
What should the Malloy camp take away from those numbers?
I think that both camps can take away that there's still plenty of time before the August primary. You certainly can't count Malloy out. He's certainly within striking distance.
Just to be clear on you started this on Monday night, you said?
Monday
Colin?
night and Tuesday night.
So you are very convinced that the convention news had sunk in, that you did not take this too early. I mean, the convention news Friday night and Saturday.
Right.
You're fully confident that the people that you talked to were aware of the latest news, frankly.
Yeah, because that was the big news over the weekend.
Okay.
So I would think it would be the most fresh in their minds on Monday and Tuesday.
Did you ask if they were aware that Malloy got the convention endorsement and that...
And it's possible, that some people, not some people, I suspect a fair number of people were not aware of it. So the point is, it didn't have much of an effect either because people didn't know that much about it, or because those who did, it didn't make that much of a difference.
Did you
But
ask
they certainly had a chance. They had 48 hours,
Right.
And frankly 72 hours from Friday night with the Senate results, all the way to Monday night is what I'm asking.
Right.
So okay.
They had an opportunity, sure.
Did you ask if people were aware that there were political conventions this
No.
weekend? Because I have a feeling probably some were.
I'm sure many of them did not know, but it did get plenty of press coverage over the weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No, get out. No.
Keep up is going to work.